So, look, TJ, we had another interesting week. It was actually kind of uneventful. I think we had a special called committee of the whole meeting that you called from 2 to 4 prior to our council meeting. And that's where I think a lot of the good discussion occurred, particularly around trying to come up with a process to identify the new city manager.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that I remember is Pete was saying, Peter Varney, we'd all basically had filled out a questionnaire for him, and then we did individual interviews with he and Pam Casey, just kind of going over what we individually believe are the vision of the city, or should be the vision of the city, and what we believe should be infrastructure changes, or whatever we feel like are the pluses, the SWOT analysis for the city.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of unusual and kind of interesting. So 19 criterion that he's asked us to rate.
Yeah.
And he's looking to skinny it down to about 3 or 4. And so in the high mark category, which I think was interesting, we collectively came up with integrity being most important, board relations being most important, diversity, equity, and inclusion most important, human resources management, staff effectiveness, policy facilitation, functional and operational expertise in planning, advocacy, and interpersonal communication, and budgeting. So half of the 19 fields we said were incredibly important. Which I think was kind of funny. I don't know if it was Councilman Blackwell or if he said this later, but we're looking for a super character with or without cape, right? Yeah. And then as it goes on, I'm like, well, are you sure we're not looking for a unicorn?
Yeah.
So Peter, I think at least in that meeting, was kind of guiding us to look, can we get this down to 3 or 4 or 5 items? And I thought there was some really good discussion around that. And I thought, particularly, integrity obviously was high on the list. Diversity, equity, and inclusion was high on the list, just given the demographic, the population, the history of Rocky Mount.
Yeah.
And the other thing was functional and operational expertise in planning. And I thought a lot of good conversation went into, well, how some of these things really could be combined together. And so that would allow Mr. Varney to come up with the RFP. And he and I talked about that a little bit this morning. And he's going to try to get that out for some review for council, hopefully this week, and we can get that process going.
Yeah.
But, so I think, so I just kind of want to hear, one of the things you spoke to probably the most, and I think we talked about, collectively the most, was diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was interesting, probably something we ought to talk about today, because I saw different people with sort of a different perspective on that, or different bent or different angle. Yeah. And I thought it was a good, healthy discussion. I really did. And I didn't see a whole lot of disagreement, but really a both and as the conversation went. So what was your, you're running the meeting. So what was your take on all of that?
Well, first and foremost, again, I've got to shout out Mr. Kevin Harris for nominating and saying, hey, listen, we've got to go back to the committee room.
Right.
I think that's opened up, opportunity for great conversation, and that which leads to, just what we discussed this past Monday, and saying, hey, we're able to really come here and have discussion about, real issues and real things that matter in order to move the city forward. And so I was very, very, very shocked to see so many similarities. Like you said, we were all sort of speaking the same language with just a different twist to everything. So that was interesting to me to kind of hear how everyone was speaking the same language, and even in our indifferences, still being able to say, hey, we may not agree 100%, but how do we still get to where we need to go to move the city forward?
Right.
And I think as long as we can continue that and push that forward, we're starting to see some great things happen in the city of Rocky Mount.
All right, so I didn't know who had made the suggestion we go back to the committee room, but I personally am entirely grateful for it, because when I'm sitting across from somebody and I'm reading your body language, that's a big form of communication, and it just makes it easier to have that dialogue. And gosh, the last, has it been 2 meetings or 3?
Yeah, last 2 or 3.
And it's just been night and day, I believe, in terms of the collaborative nature of the discussion versus when you're sitting there in a panel format, and even like during the COVID period when we're really looking at an empty auditorium.
Yeah.
And everybody's just kind of stating a position. It doesn't lend itself to that. How do we work together and how do we build? And so amen to that. Another interesting point, I was talking to city manager today, in a meeting that you and I normally go to together. And he was saying, we're trying to figure out how to stream our regular council meetings as well as the committee of the whole meetings through our website and through our TV19 versus using Facebook.
Mhm.
And one of the things I think is very important is if you're watching it on Facebook, there are a lot of comments that happen, and I'm not sure they're particularly healthy in the discourse of trying to govern the city or
Yeah.
where we're trying to go. I mean, sometimes we're just trying to figure our way through the process. Decisions aren't made, and so I thought that was a very good, wise move. I'm excited for us to get there, and so I think that also will help some of the shaping some of the conversations.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a great twist. Social media it has its pros and cons, but I think figuring out a way to utilize it to our benefit will always be beneficial for
That's
the
right.
greater sake of the city.
That's right. I mean, it doesn't need to look like we're in the Coliseum, right? And
Yeah,
everybody's trying to figure out
exactly.
what that. It's not a competition. It's more of a
Yeah,
how do we get to the place that helps everybody in the community.
that's it.
And community, as I define it, is everybody who lives within the city limits of Rocky Mount, and secondarily those who have economic interest in the city of Rocky Mount. I think are viable individuals.
That's it.
So, but anyway, we really had a lot of discussion about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I was proud of that. I felt like I think where we ended up with the conversation is that really is a lens that we should be looking through
Hmm.
and trying to make decisions as it relates to the totality of the city. And
That's right.
it took us quite a while to get there, but I thought that was great. It was just great to see that. I got to tell you, I was happy. I mean, not every opinion was exactly representative of my perspective, but that's the beauty of conversation, right?
Yeah,
And vice versa.
and
I'm
and
sure I espoused some stuff that not everybody else was agreement with, but anyway.
and I think by the end of that conversation, we got to what you're saying that topic of hey, we're really all saying this is a lens
Right,
that we want to look through.
right,
Versus the beginning of the conversation, it was more so of a tactical kind of
right.
conversation and logistical kind of
Sure.
detailed out. But it was saying, hey, no. At the end, everyone was agreeing, hey, this is a lens perspective that we're trying to that everybody's agreeing to,
Right.
but it's
Right.
more so of the perspective of the lens that we're talking about.
Well,
And
it's just
that
like
was beautiful.
integrity, right? That's a
Yeah,
lens. I mean, you can measure it, but it means different things to different people too,
exactly,
right?
exactly,
So anyway, those are
exactly.
my thoughts. But I think where we landed on when it was all said and done, it comes down to we want an effective leader who understands the culture of the city. Ideally would be from here, I suppose, but absent of that, at least understands the culture, who gets it, who's willing to do the research and homework, who's visionary, but at the same time willing to step back and hear and listen and then be effective in the management of the city on the go forward. So it's
Good.
still a little bit of a unicorn kind of
Yeah,
concept, but we got to shoot for something.
that's it. That's it. And I mean, I'm glad we had high expectations.
Me too.
That was one thing that I really that stood out to me is saying, hey, our expectations of what we want is been set to be at a high mark, and so if we miss that mark,
Right.
we'll still fall at a great place.
Yeah, maybe we ought to go through some of the SWOT analysis stuff.
Yeah,
Because I'm not sure that people really had a chance in the meeting to necessarily hear that, and I don't want to necessarily read, but jump in anytime you want.
right.
But one of the things was one of the advantages that we believe that we share is that we do have a vision, and so there's a strategic, big picture kind of viewpoint. And we want to develop a strategic plan. That's something you've been an advocate of. It's certainly something I've been a proponent of, and I think many others, but then we update that comprehensive plan and then build it out based on a ward perspective, because every ward has unique needs. And we've talked
Yeah,
about how to build that up from the ward level to include the whole city and maybe focus on some areas that, while they may be in a ward or maybe we'll call them beneficial to the whole city, like downtown redevelopment,
yeah,
and
yeah.
fostering what's going on at the event center and trying to figure out how to park and all those kinds of things. And so,
That's it.
I thought that was interesting that everybody kind of came to that same place,
Yeah, yeah, and really looking at wanting to get to that place. That's the beauty of that is saying, hey, we know that it's needed, but a want from everyone of saying, hey, this is where we want to be.
Right.
We want to have a plan.
And again, everybody's in agreement with that too.
Yeah,
I think somehow or another, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where the miscommunication has occurred. But I mean,
Yeah.
everybody really at the end of the day wanted the same thing. I think maybe we fight over the process, or maybe we fight over how you get there. I don't know, but
Mhm.
I didn't even see a whole lot of evidence of that in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, once you I think once we've gotten to a place where, again, in the committee room where we're sitting down across from each other,
Right.
we're having conversation.
Right.
It's not a argument. It's not a debate.
Right.
Sort of when we're in a lineage, in chambers, it's almost like we're in a debate setting.
Well, we kind of
Yeah.
are. I mean, we kind of are. I mean,
Yeah.
that's true,
Yeah. Yeah.
and even that doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but it lends
Yeah.
itself, I believe, to
Exactly.
that
Again,
kind
it's
of discourse.
perspective.
Right.
How it's viewed. I think we all unconsciously go into it saying, hey, just look at the environment, and when we come in, we're across the table from each other,
Right.
and we're seeing all different backgrounds, all different cultures, being able to sit down at a table and live out what was Dr. King's dream.
Right.
We all being at the table
There you go.
together. And so I think that committee room really brings out a lot of the fruit of what we're seeing
Right.
in effective communication.
I think one of the important things too that we ought to go over is, collectively, what were the list of challenges that folks had identified, and that's one mayor, I guess, and 7 members of council had come up with, and this was sort of the list. And I thought that maybe it deserves a little bit of discussion. One was to restore trust, credibility, and confidence in city government, seek opportunities for bringing people together, elevate household incomes, seek consensus on a vision for the city. Apply a concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion to all that we do, employee recruitment and retention, infrastructure maintenance, streets and recreation facilities, maintain relationships between elected leadership and city staff characterized by open communication, trust, and confidence. And so, I thought that was interesting that we had come up with that list. And the other thing I thought was interesting is that Mr. Varney had indicated, said, look, race came up a couple of times. I was trying to distill the list to something that didn't include race per se. I thought also there was a healthy conversation about that. Well, how can that ever be? I mean, how can you not have a conversation about race? Because it just is.
Exactly.
Does it make it comfortable? Does it make it
Yeah.
good? Does it make it bad? It's something that's the thing we need to talk about in the room. And I thought several people brought that up well. I thought Councilman Blackwell did a great job with that. I thought that even Councilman Daltrich made some points that were interesting. And anyway, I thought that was great. But the challenges, if we can elevate household incomes, and if we can develop that vision for the city, and if we can come up with a plan that allows us to be opportunistic when opportunity presents and tactical when we need to be, I think that we can make real strides for a lot of folks in the community. And I know one of the passions are redevelopment of some of the inner city neighborhoods and trying to figure out how to crack that nut. I'm looking forward to, and I believe that's really one of the primary topics of your special call. We'll call it Committee of the Whole mini retreat that we're going to do in April sometime in Rocky Mount, and to be able to have this kind of discourse.
Yeah. I think it's going to be great. And to be able to, like you said, deal with these challenges. Again, it's about that lens. If we're dealing with raising the household income, the lens we're looking at some of our diversity and equity and inclusion, that same lens to be able to say, this is how we're going to address raising the household income, which will in turn help some of those other challenges that we saw face. I think, dealing with one of those issues will help change some of the rest of the challenges we have.
They're all interrelated, right? There's
That's
nothing in a silo here in this story. And that's the thing that I think we all need to begin to really fully appreciate.
Exactly.
The other thing that, when we were talking about major issues that kind of came up from the survey that were being presented, that I thought was interesting and something we don't often talk about, but that was education.
Yeah.
At least there was a recognition among a majority or at least a significant number of council that education is something that helps us both from an economic development standpoint, but more importantly, it helps us equip our native sons and daughters and our kids in our community to be able to level the playing field for opportunity going forward. I mean, that's just a big deal, and it's just unavoidable. The challenge is that it's not a 2-year project and all of a sudden you can chart success and call it done. It's generations. It builds on itself. And I thought it was really interesting, at least in that committee of the whole, that we've begun to have a conversation about, well, what can we do? I mean, it's not the city's job to engage in the school system.
Yeah.
yet the city can't really survive without it. We have the challenge of being in 2 counties, and so we're dealing with 2 different school jurisdictions.
Yeah.
Yet I don't go and sell Rocky Mount as, this side or that side. It's Rocky Mount, and so, education matters in terms of bringing people to the table. So I don't think we came to any conclusions,
Exactly.
but it was one of the first times I remember this council or councils as a whole in the past really just talk about what can we do, what is permissible, what makes sense, what's sustainable. Anyway, I just thought that was good to hear, to see. I mean, people starting to think outside the, not starting, but maybe, at least an agreement of let's try to think outside the box on some of these things that may not be within our typical jurisdiction or
Yeah.
thought processes. And
Yeah.
I know you're sitting with Edgecombe County as part of a community advisory board trying to figure out this demerger thing and
Yeah.
impact on that. And so, it's a very real issue that we're having to contend with. And maybe you have a
Absolutely.
different perspective you want to share on that.
Well, I was going to say, I think it was a great icebreaker to begin the conversation of saying, hey, how do we get involved as a city? Because again, we're not actually hands-on at the process with the school systems, but we do have all of the kids that attend,
Right.
majority Nash and Edgecombe, they're majority in the city limits of Rocky Mount. And we also have a lot of those employees and parents. And so whether we want to be involved or not, we're involved. We're stuck in the middle.
That's
so
it.
figuring out a way to participate in the conversation, to engage in the process, at least to say, how can we help? If there's any way we can help, but how does the city fit in? I think that was great to be able to hear from that meeting to start just thinking about how the city can be a part of that process. Like you said about the demerger, I mean, we're looking at something that's going to be huge, a huge challenge for both counties, Nash and Edgecombe, something that historically has been in Nash Rocky Mountains for as long as I've lived, as long as I've been in the school system, seeing the potential of that split. And so how do we, in that split, begin to be a part of even that conversation as a city?
Right.
And like you stated, I am a part of that advisory board for Edgecombe County, which I think is going to be tremendous. They've got some awesome plans, awesome ideas that are already spearheaded. And again, our city, economic development wise, we're only going to be as good as our school systems. And
Amen.
so, looking at what Edgecombe is looking to bring, and with Nash, the resources and building on what they have, I think we're in a great position here in the city of Rocky Mount. And it was excellent to hear that conversation about education come up.
Me too. Just a little side on the demerger. I mean, I've been privy to some of the plans that Edgecombe County is at least discussing, and I'm got to tell you, I'm pretty excited about it. But I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder. But I see real opportunity, real potential there, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, man, it's great. Wish I could go back and do it again.
We'll just leave. I know, right? I mean, really. But we'll just leave that be. We can't talk about all the other without talking about some of the city's strengths, right? So one of the things that a lot of people were saying, or I'll just go through the list, and I think this holds true. What is one of the biggest strengths of the city? And resilience.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of conflict. We've had a lot of challenges. I mean, we've had a lot of injustices. We've had a lot of, go through the list.
Yeah.
We are far from a perfect city with far from a perfect history and far from being perfect today.
Yeah.
But I do say that we are resilient, and I think most people are absolutely proud to be from Rocky Mount and being part of the city. So it's somewhat of a juxtaposition, perhaps, but it's still interesting. And of course, infrastructure, fire department, police department, cultural arts, historically good leadership, and of course, location. And that matters. And the city's not so large it can't be a community. So I don't think we spend enough time talking about some of those real positives that we have, and the capacity that we have even in infrastructure. And I just think that we probably ought to spend at least a nanosecond on it, right? We are at least representing folks in Rocky Mount.
That's it, man. And that's what makes us unique.
Yeah.
But once you become familiar with the place, once you've been somewhere for so long, you kind of get familiar with it. You get comfortable with it. you don't share those pluses and those strengths as often as you should. You
Right.
focus on a lot of the negatives, a lot of the norm, and some things just become so routine that you forget about how unique we are, how great we are as a city.
Yeah. No. I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's right. And so, anyway, the other stuff we can go through and look at the various remarks, but that was my biggest take home from the committee of the whole, and I thought it was a good session. I'm looking forward to an RFP going out. We selected 3 national firms,
3
and
nationals, one local.
North Carolina firm.
Yep.
We'll see what those RFPs produce in terms of interest, in terms of the pitch from those groups. So the process is moving forward. That's always exciting to see and be part of. And I think, again, everybody's looking for the same person and type. I mean, and I'm excited to see what that ultimately will manifest itself with. I really am.
Again, I think it's going to lead to some great conversation.
Yep.
And finding out how, even in our indifferences, still getting to the main goal.
Right.
So looking forward to it.
Me too. So then we moved on to really the agenda, the actual agenda. And there was virtually no conversation on on any item. I mean, nothing of real note. I mean, normally there's a few items that we feel like we need to discuss, but I really don't recall anything of what I would consider to be significance. And so it was a pretty quick meeting, really, surprisingly so.
Yeah, clear cut, straight to the point. We were in and out.
Yeah.
It wasn't normal, but
well, it wasn't.
It works.
But you know what? I think, it has not been our norm. It doesn't mean that it can't be going forward, right? But but I do think, and I think we've got to give some credit to everybody involved in the story. The production of information about arrests and about crime activities. Sort of a, I hate to use the word transparent. That's so overused.
Oh yeah.
But I think we have been as open as we can about just stuff, right? I mean, it's happened. It just is. This is what we've done. Public records requests, I think, have been fulfilled pretty quickly. And I think it just reduces any conspiracy types of theories, and it just kind of makes everything a little bit less of a debate. I believe that, and not that the previous administration was bad at these things. I'm not suggesting that, but I am saying that I believe that, the little explanations that have come to us, maybe that little packet of information going into the meeting that everybody has a chance to look at and read to provide a little bit more explanation, reduces the questions.
That's it. It's all about perception.
Right.
It's all about perception.
And even internally, I haven't seen a whole lot of, questions coming up. I mean, not in the last couple of meetings. Now, knock on wood. But, questions are fine when they're needed. But, when they've been answered, it's okay.
Yeah. And it can provide for healthy dialogue, healthy relationship building. So I'm loving where we are. Looking forward to continue to grow. I think this is 3 months in as Mayor Pro Tem, and 9 more to go.
So. That's right. Are you marking your walls like
oh man,
checking them off?
Checking them off. Yeah. And it's been great.
It has been good, and I've enjoyed having you as Mayor Pro Tem and the relationship that we've been able to develop and the understanding. And again, I mean, don't agree on everything, but that's the beauty of it. I don't want that.
That's it.
Because I learn. In some form of honest debate. And so that's been beneficial.
Exactly.
Beyond that, I can't really remember anything else that we talked about other than we have scheduled tentatively a retreat, an overnight retreat, I think maybe in the fall, maybe late summer or early fall in Durham at North Carolina Central. By then, we'll have new members of council, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't think the dates are set yet, but I think that'll be a good environment to be able to look at development and what a plan and a vision can do, what it can mean, mistakes that perhaps they feel like they've made or didn't make. And, so it's just a chance for us to, step back and just look at somebody else's experience. And I know that we've been here before with these other councils have been there before. I've not had that opportunity. So I'm looking forward to that perspective and that conversation.
Exactly. And we haven't been there this close to development.
Right.
And actually to a place where Durham is actually developed.
Right.
and we're in the process of developing.
That's
and
right.
so, being so similar in sort of
We
demographics
are.
and makeup,
We are.
they're a larger city, but we share a lot of similarities. And
We do.
so I think we can learn a lot from what Durham has done. And I spent 5 years there through that process of seeing their development.
Right.
And they're so glad to have Capital Broadcasting here in the city for
Sure.
all they're doing.
Who were sparking that particular development, the American Tobacco
Exactly.
campus. That was a
Exactly.
big deal.
Yes, sir. So, we're in a great place.
Yeah.
We're in a great place. If there's anywhere to be in America,
Yeah.
Rocky Mount's the place.
There
to
you
be.
go. Upward and onward.
That's it.
It's good to
That's
see
it.
you. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.